Hey guys, tonight we're going to slip into the gaslit streets of 19th century Paris and follow some of the most overlooked workers of the age, the allumeurs, the Lamplighters. You picture yourself standing at the edge of the Seine, dusk settling like a velvet curtain, and one by one, the lamps flicker awake above the boulevards. A man with a long pole and steady step is the quiet magician here, pacing his nightly route. You probably won't survive this story without nodding off. Though don't worry, the lamps will stay burning while you drift. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and the local time in the comments. I love seeing just how far and wide this little sleepy circle stretches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The hour is just after sunset, what Parisians called the entre-chien et loup, the moment between dog and wolf, when daylight fades but night hasn't fully claimed the streets. You shuffle along cobblestones that are still holding the day's warmth, listening to the distant rattle of carriage wheels and the murmur of cafe chatter. Then you hear the faint scrape of a metal pole against iron. You turn and see him, a lamplighter, uniformed but unhurried, setting flame to the first wick of the evening. The mainstream historical fact here is simple but magical. By the mid-1800s, Paris had more than 56,000 gas lamps, each of which needed to be lit by hand every evening and extinguished again each morning. An entire workforce of allumeurs moved through the city like clock hands, keeping Paris bright when the sun retreated. Without them, the boulevards would have vanished into darkness. And here's your quirky tidbit. Lamplighters often developed a reputation for knowing everyone's business. As they moved from street to street, they overheard snatches of conversation, witnessed quiet arguments, even caught glimpses of lovers' trysts under their newly glowing lamps. One wag joked that lamplighters knew the city's secrets better than priests and twice as well as the police. You smirk, imagining them as reluctant gossip collectors, each pole stroke illuminating another tale. Of course, historians still argue whether the spread of lamplighting was more about safety or spectacle. Was it truly installed to deter crime, or was it just another performance of Parisian modernity? Haussmann's boulevards gleaming like stage sets to impress visiting dignitaries? Some claim it was practical, others insist it was all about civic pride. You let both arguments flicker together like twin flames above the street. You step closer to the lamplighter. His pole ends in a small lamp itself, a flicker of fire enclosed in glass. With a practiced motion, he reaches up, touches flame to burner, and withdraws. Instantly the lamp glows steady, a pale yellow globe against the growing night. He repeats this move over and over, each motion as fluid as breathing. To you, it feels like watching someone gently press play on the city's evening soundtrack. Around you, Paris changes character. Shopkeepers lean in doorways, their wares now glowing under the artificial light. Couples emerge for evening promenades. The Seine reflects twin strings of lamps along its banks, a golden ladder shimmering across black water. The lamplighter's routine, mechanical as it seems, is the quiet hinge upon which the city turns from day to night. And here's tonight's light joke. You imagine one lamplighter yawning, muttering, "One of these days I'll forget a lamp," only to find the entire neighborhood writing angry letters to City Hall by dawn. Even in 1850, customer complaints never slept. As you trail him down the street, the rhythm of his work soothes you, the clink of his pole, the flare of each flame, the soft hiss of gas catching fire. By the time he reaches the corner, Paris behind him glows in neat rows, each lamp a tiny sun. You pause, letting the warm yellow blur your eyes, and realize that the peculiar routines of these men are what stitch the night together. Without them, the city would dissolve into shadow. With them, it hums, alive and safe, ready for dreams. You trail the lamplighter further down the street, and as he makes his steady way from post to post, you feel a tug backwards in time. Before the hiss of gas burners, before this neat choreography of poles and flames, Paris relied on a much messier glow. Oil lamps, smoky and fickle, were the ancestors of these gas-fed globes. You picture the city of the 18th and very early 19th century, dim pools of yellow light surrounded by thick shadows, every alley a game of chance. The mainstream historical fact is this: until the early 1800s, Parisian street lighting was almost entirely oil-based, using whale oil at first, and later colza oil pressed from rapeseed. These lamps were fitted with wicks that had to be trimmed regularly, and the flames sputtered whenever wind, rain, or just poor maintenance got the upper hand. Lighting the entire city was laborious, and on bad nights, half the lamps might gutter out before midnight. You imagine yourself standing with one of those earlier lamplighters, his pole tipped not with a spark but with a smoldering taper. He reaches up to a glass lantern, fumbles open the panel, trims the wick, pours in a little more oil, then leans back to light it. The smell is sharp, oily, heavy, almost fishy, and it clings to your coat. By the time he finishes a block, his fingers are slick, and his clothes bear permanent stains. Not exactly the kind of scent you'd want following you into polite company. Here's the quirky tidbit: in some quarters, residents would actually tip lamplighters in oil or candles, worried that official supplies were stretched too thin. One anecdote tells of a lamplighter who lugged around a pouch bulging with mismatched candles, lighting whatever he could when oil ran short. Imagine your neighborhood lamps glowing with a strange patchwork: one faint fishy odor, one neat candle flame, one stubbornly dark because even bribery couldn't coax it alive. Historians still argue whether oil lighting truly improved city safety, or whether it simply created the illusion of security. Some say even the dimmest glow deterred crime and made streets more navigable. Others counter that robbers quickly learned to work in the shadows between lamps, using the faint halos as helpful spotlights to pick out victims. You stand at a corner, trying to decide if the oil lamp above you feels reassuring or ominous, its weak flame fluttering like a nervous eyelid. The sensory details are thick in this older Paris. Smoke curls from every lamp, stinging your nose. A steady drip of oil slicks the cobblestones beneath each post, making the ground shine darkly. The lamplighter coughs as soot settles in his throat, muttering curses at wicks that refuse to catch. The work feels endless, Sisyphean, with each flame demanding as much attention as a needy house cat. Here's your gentle joke for the night: imagine a Parisian wag scribbling in his journal: "Our lamps are so smoky, you could follow your nose home by sniffing for soot." He probably wasn't wrong. Paris streets reeked of burnt oil long before they smelled of roasted chestnuts. But for all the flaws, those faint halos of light did transform the city. Before oil lamps, nights were governed entirely by moon and torch. Afterward, even with smoke and stink, Parisians could walk a little more freely, cafes could extend their hours, and lovers could linger just long enough to whisper beneath a lantern's dim glow. You picture a young couple laughing softly, pretending not to notice the soot drifting into their hair, while the lamplighter trudges on, resigned to trimming wicks until dawn. By the time you blink back to the gaslit boulevard of the 1850s, the difference feels striking. These new flames hiss cleanly, bright and steady. The old oil days are a ghost, lingering in memory like the smell of burned fish oil on your coat. You tug the collar tighter and decide you're grateful for progress, even if it means one day another system will leave this one in the shadows too. You shake off the ghostly whiff of whale oil and colza smoke, settling again into the company of the gas lamplighter. Tonight your attention drifts from the glow of the flames to the curious set of instruments rattling in his hands. The job looks simple from a distance: poke the lamp, make it shine. But up close you realize this man carries an arsenal. Each tool has its own purpose, and each carries the scratches and polish of long use. Here's your mainstream historical fact: lamplighters of 19th century Paris were issued a long lighting pole fitted with a small flame at its tip, plus a hook or key for turning the gas tap. They also carried short ladders for lamps mounted high, and maintenance gear for trimming wicks or replacing mantles once the technology evolved. Without these tools, the work of lighting thousands of lamps each evening would have been impossible. You watch him pause at the base of a post. With one practiced motion, he presses a hook against the side of the lamp, turning a hidden valve that lets gas hiss into the burner. Then, with a flick of his pole's tip, he introduces fire, and the globe above your head comes alive with a steady golden light. He gives the lamp a little tap, almost affectionate, then moves on. The pole clicks lightly on cobblestones with each step, like a staff marking rhythm for his walk. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some lamplighters customize their poles, wrapping them with bits of leather for grip, or carving notches to measure height. One fellow was rumored to attach a bell to the end, so children would run out to greet him as he passed. Imagine the delight of Parisian kids chasing a man with what looked like a glowing staff, a kind of urban wizard in blue wool. You can almost hear their laughter echoing through narrow alleys. Historians still argue whether lamplighters were seen as respected civic workers or simply low-paid drudges. Some accounts describe them as neighborhood fixtures, greeted warmly on their rounds. Others suggest they were treated as invisible labor, noticed only when a lamp failed. As you walk beside him, you sense both realities. His tools give him a kind of quiet authority, yet the stoop of his shoulders reveals the weight of repetition. The sensory detail of these tools is vivid, the brass key cool in his gloved hand, the smell of charred wick clinging to his fingers, the faint squeal of metal as valves turn. His ladder, strapped to his back, creaks with every step, while the lighting pole leaves faint scorch marks where its tip has burned too long. Even his uniform pockets bulge with spare flints and rags, jingling like a makeshift toolbox. And here's your gentle joke for the section. Picture a lamplighter fumbling with too many gadgets at once, ladder slipping, pole clattering, key dropping, while a Parisian passerby quips, "Monsieur, are you lighting lamps or playing the cymbals?" The lamplighter mutters back something less polite but continues on, dignity slightly singed. You walk with him into a small square, where 4 lamps wait. He unstraps the ladder, sets it against the tallest post, and climbs slowly, every rung groaning beneath his boots. Reaching the lamp, he polishes the glass with a rag, muttering about soot. Then he relights the burner, steps back down, and folds the ladder with the same care a musician might give to his instrument. Each gesture reveals not just labor but ritual, motions repeated nightly until they become almost meditative. By the time he shoulders his ladder again and strides toward the next street, you understand, his peculiar toolkit isn't just metal and wood. It's an extension of his body, a choreography that allows him to bring light into darkness. And as his pole tips upward once more, you can almost convince yourself that Paris glows not because of gas, but because of him. The lamplighter adjusts his pole on his shoulder, checks the small watch pinned inside his vest, and sets off at a pace you can only describe as mathematical. Each step feels measured, each turn down an alley deliberate. You realize you're no longer just strolling with him, you're following a strict, invisible map. This is the tourney, the nightly circuit, a choreography of time and distance that defines his life as surely as any heartbeat. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Lamplighters in Paris were assigned fixed routes, often covering dozens of lamps, and their rounds were timed to the minute. Many coordinated with church bells or, later, municipal clocks. The expectation was precision. Every lamp on a given street should spring to life within minutes of dusk, as though the city itself obeyed an unseen conductor. You watch him reach the corner just as the bells of St. Sulpice chime, and he lifts his pole exactly on cue. The lamp catches, the flame blossoms, and you feel as if he's in conversation with time itself. He glances neither left nor right, only forward, his mind clearly rehearsing the turns and timings etched into his memory. Now for the quirky tidbit. Lamplighters often became walking clocks for their neighborhoods. Residents who lacked watches would sometimes ask, "Has the lamplighter passed yet?" If he had, they knew it was just after sunset. Some jokers even set their dinner tables by his pace, declaring, "Soup must be served, the lamps are lit." Imagine relying on a man with a pole instead of a pocket watch. You grin, realizing how endearingly human that system was. Historians still argue whether this regimented routine was liberating for the workers, giving them clear structure and purpose, or stifling, chaining them to a repetitive grind. Was the tourney a badge of order or a sentence of monotony? Some describe lamplighters as proud professionals of rhythm, others as weary slaves to the ticking of clocks. Watching his steady gait, you feel the debate play out in every step. The sensory details of the tourney immerse you, the faint hiss as each lamp awakens, the distant peal of bells marking the next checkpoint, the creak of boots against cobblestones worn smooth by endless circuits. You sense the cool dampness of evening settling on your skin, while gaslight pools gently at your feet with each freshly lit post. And here's your gentle joke. Picture a lamplighter accidentally speeding up, racing ahead of schedule. Neighbors stumble out, squinting at the too early glow, muttering, "Is it bedtime already?" Children wail, convinced they've missed supper, while cats yawn at the sudden rush of light. Even the city's pigeons flap indignantly at the disruption of their routine. As you follow, you notice how the turning knits the city together. One street after another transforms from dim uncertainty to golden certainty. The lamplighter's route is a seam stitched across Paris, every lamp a stitch in the quilt. By the time he pauses for a breath at the edge of a boulevard, you realize the tourney is not just about keeping time. It is time, embodied, walking past you with a pole tipped in fire. You keep pace with him as the streets widen, and suddenly you're swept into one of Haussmann's new boulevards, long, straight, and lined with trees that reach upward like columns in some open-air cathedral. The lamplighter pauses, looks down the endless stretch, and sighs the way you might before folding an impossibly long pile of laundry. Then he squares his shoulders and begins the march, pole rising and falling in a steady rhythm. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Baron Haussmann's mid-19th century renovation of Paris wasn't just about wide boulevards and uniform facades. It was also about light. Gas lamps became symbols of the city's modernity, spaced evenly along avenues to create corridors of golden glow. Tourists marveled, and Parisians boasted that theirs was the brightest city in Europe, a reputation that earned Paris the nickname La Ville Lumière, the city of light. As you follow, you notice the distinctive fishtail flames licking inside the glass globes. These special burners split the gas jet into twin tongues of fire, producing brighter and steadier light than earlier single flames. The lamplighter taps a valve, applies his pull, and instantly the boulevard takes on a theatrical quality, as if you've stepped onto the stage of a vast nighttime performance. Cafes sparkle, shop windows gleam, and every polished boot clicking on the pavement catches a highlight. Now for the quirky tidbit. Gusts of wind often played mischief with the fishtail flames. A single gust down the boulevard could snuff half a dozen lamps at once, forcing lamplighters to circle back in annoyance. Some reportedly tucked bits of wax cloth in their pockets, wrapping the base of burners to shield them. Imagine the absurdity. Paris's modern marvel secretly held together by scraps of rag, like a glamorous diva held up by safety pins. Historians still argue whether Haussmann's glowing boulevards truly improved the lives of ordinary Parisians, or whether they mainly served as grand promenades for the wealthy. Did working-class families in cramped side streets enjoy the benefits of illumination, or was the light meant to flatter the city's reputation abroad? You watch the lamplighter stride down the boulevard, his flames scattering light in both directions, and wonder if he cares about the politics. He just has lamps to tend. The sensory panorama is overwhelming, the hiss of new flames catching, the whoosh of wine down the wide street, the smell of roasted chestnuts mixing with coal smoke from nearby chimneys. Carriages roll past, horses' hooves sparking faintly on stone, while cafe terraces hum with laughter and the clink of glasses. Every few meters, the lamplighter punctuates the symphony with another burst of light. Here's your gentle joke. Imagine a lamplighter trying to impress a date by inviting her to watch him work along the boulevard. "See," he says proudly, "I make Paris shine." She nods politely, then mutters, "Yes, monsieur, but you're also walking away every 30 seconds. Not exactly the most romantic setup. By the time he reaches the far end, you glance back and see the transformation. A once shadowy corridor now ablaze with orderly flames, each lamp reflecting in shop-front glass and puddles on the stones. The boulevard has become a glowing spine of the city, a beacon for night strollers and late workers alike. And though the lamplighter barely pauses before trudging on, you feel the weight of his accomplishment, an ordinary routine that keeps an entire city alight. You leave the broad boulevard behind and follow the lamplighter as his route bends toward the Seine. The air grows damper, cooler, touched with the smell of river water and algae. Stone bridges arch across the slow current, their shadows stretching long and uncertain. He adjusts his grip on the pole, because here the job grows trickier. Fog creeps in, gusts from the water flicker the flames, and the lamps themselves perch precariously above slick cobblestones. Here's your mainstream historical fact. By the mid-19th century, Paris maintained hundreds of lamps along its bridges and riverbanks. These were not just decorative, they were essential for safety. The Seine was a busy artery of barges, ferries, and fishermen, and darkened crossings invited disaster. Lamps mounted along arches and parapets gave both pedestrians and river traffic a fighting chance against night's hazards. You watch him step carefully onto Pont Neuf, boots slipping slightly on damp stone. He braces the pole, reaches high, and with a hiss the lamp above him flares to life. The flame throws a halo through the mist, catching droplets of moisture that glitter like falling stars. He moves on, the rhythm of his work echoing with the splash of oars and the occasional call of a boatman below. Here's the quirky tidbit. Lamplighters near the river were known to carry extra cloth to wipe off condensation inside the glass globes. Fog would blur the light, making each lamp look like a glowing jellyfish suspended in the mist. Some locals swore they could predict the weather by how quickly lamps clouded. If the glow turned milky, a storm was near. Imagine checking your evening forecast by staring at a fogged lamp, shrugging, and fetching an umbrella. Historians still argue whether the riverside lamps were primarily meant for public convenience, or whether they served a more symbolic role, framing Paris as a luminous capital when viewed from its bridges. Were they practical guides, or civic jewelry strung along the Seine? Standing beside him on the Pont au Change, watching lamps shimmer in the dark water, you suspect they were both. The sensory details envelop you, the damp chill sinking into your coat, the sharp tang of wet iron railings, the muffled thud of carriage wheels crossing above. Each flame fights against the mist, creating pockets of gold that dissolve as quickly as they appear. Somewhere in the distance, Notre Dame's towers loom, their outlines softened by fog, while rows of lamps ripple faintly in the river's reflection. And here's your gentle joke. Picture a lamplighter leaning too far over a parapet, nearly losing his pole to the current. He mutters, "There goes my evening wage," only for a passing fisherman to yell back, "Careful, monsieur, you'll light the fish instead." As he finishes the last lamp on the bridge, the transformation feels miraculous. What was moments ago a dim, eerie crossing now glows with quiet security. Lovers stroll hand in hand, pausing to admire the reflection of twin lamps shimmering like twin moons. Bargemen below steer more confidently, their eyes following the glowing trail across the arches. You trail the lamplighter off the bridge, mist curling behind you, feeling that peculiar satisfaction of having pushed back darkness, if only one flame at a time. You leave the mist of the riverbank and follow the lamplighter into a very different Paris, one of twisting alleys, tucked-away courtyards, and cul-de-sacs so narrow you have to angle your shoulders to squeeze through. The boulevards were proud, theatrical arteries, but here the city feels more like a secret diary, each lamp hidden behind shutters or dangling over laundry lines. The lamplighter slows, not because he wants to, but because the routine here is more like scavenger hunting than marching. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Even after Haussmann's renovations, Paris still contained hundreds of older medieval streets, especially in the Marais and near the Isle de la Cite. Lamps were installed in these cramped quarters as well, but their placement was irregular, wedged into corners, nailed against leaning facades, or perched above carriage gates that led into private courtyards. Lamplighters were expected to tend them all, no matter how awkward the climb or angle. You trail behind as he ducks into a narrow passage where the smell of damp stone overwhelms you. He raises his pole, carefully avoids snagging a clothesline, and coaxes a reluctant flame to life above a doorway. A woman peers out from an upper window, arms crossed, clearly suspicious of his presence. You notice how much closer, more intimate these rounds feel. The lamplighter practically enters people's private lives with every flick of his flame. Here's the quirky tidbit. In some hidden courtyards, residents treated the lamplighter as a kind of unofficial guest. They might leave him a scrap of bread, or on cold nights, a sip of warm wine, as thanks for trudging all the way in. Children would wait for his pole to spark, then clap as if a magician had just pulled fire out of thin air. You picture him bowing theatrically, pretending the trick took skill, when in truth it was just another valve and wick. Historians still argue whether lighting these secluded spaces truly benefited the people, or whether it was mainly symbolic, a way of asserting the city's authority into every crevice. Was the light meant to serve residents, or simply to demonstrate municipal reach? Some scholars praise the effort as public service, while others note how expensive and inefficient these tucked-away lamps proved. You stand in one such cul-de-sac, glowing faintly, and wonder if anyone really feels safer here, or just more visible. The sensory details are heavy, the scrape of boots on cobbles damp with yesterday's rain, the faint mildew clinging to stone walls, the muffled gossip of neighbors leaning out to watch. The flame above you sputters for a moment, reflecting off a puddle like liquid gold, before steadying into its nightly glow. In the cramped silence, you hear your own breathing louder than the city's pulse. And here's your gentle joke. Imagine a lamplighter grumbling after lighting a courtyard lamp that only 3 cats and 1 night watchman will ever see. "Half an hour of walking for an audience of whiskers," he mutters, shaking his head as a cat blinks slowly in approval. By the time he exits another maze of alleys, the lamplighter's pace has slowed, his pull nicked by too many close encounters with stone. Yet behind him, each hidden corner now carries a faint golden circle, as if the city were stitched together not only by broad boulevards, but also by the quiet persistence of light in its smallest, most private spaces. You follow, eyelids heavy, feeling that you too have wandered into the city's secret diary, one illuminated line at a time. The lamplighter emerges from the maze of alleys, shoulders hunched, pole tip still glowing faintly. But his duties don't end with fire. You walk beside him and notice the way he scans the street corners, eyes sharp despite the fatigue. It dawns on you, he is not only the servant of light but also a quiet guardian of the night. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Lamplighters in Paris often doubled informally as watchmen. Their nightly routes meant they covered every block, every bridge, every courtyard at roughly the same times each evening. City authorities relied on their presence, knowing the lamplighters' steady rounds deterred mischief. In an age before modern policing was widespread, a man carrying a pole tipped with fire became both worker and sentinel. You watch him pause at a corner where a drunkard slumps against a doorway. With practiced calm, the lamplighter nudges him awake, murmurs something, and points toward home. The man stumbles off, muttering, while the lamplighter relights a weak flame above, as though the whole scene were just another item on his list. He doesn't raise his voice, doesn't break his rhythm, just keeps the night in order with understated authority. Here's the quirky tidbit. Lamplighters were sometimes asked to carry messages on their rounds. A shopkeeper might stop one, pressing a quick note into his hand. "Please deliver this across the boulevard when you pass." With their predictable routes and steady presence, lamplighters became unofficial couriers, trusted to slip a letter or warning into the right doorway. Imagine the absurdity. Tending fire in one hand, ferrying gossip in the other. Historians still argue whether this watchman role was truly effective or largely symbolic. Did lamplighters genuinely prevent crime, or did their presence simply reassure nervous citizens? Some scholars highlight accounts of lamplighters thwarting thieves. Others suggest they were more often silent witnesses, their authority more imagined than real. As you watch him stride down another street, you can't decide whether he looks like a guard or just a man too busy to care. The sensory details of this role are different. You notice the quiet authority in his footfalls, steady but firm. The pole clicks lightly against cobblestones, not just as a tool but almost as a baton. Around you, the night hums with subdued energy, shutters creak, a distant violin plays from a cafe, and somewhere a dog barks once before falling silent. The lamplighter keeps moving, calm as a pendulum, presence enough to smooth the street's edges. Here's your gentle joke. Picture a lamplighter catching a group of teenagers trying to blow out a lamp for fun. He shakes his head, mutters, "Children, you realize that's just more work for me?" The pranksters, embarrassed, probably lit candles at home afterward in solidarity. Yet beneath the humor, there's quiet dignity. This man doesn't wear the badge of a policeman or the robes of a priest, yet he shepherds the city through its vulnerable hours. His flame doesn't only illuminate, it signals order, continuity, and presence. As you follow him deeper into the night, you realize his peculiar routine stretches beyond lighting lamps. He tends not just fire, but the fragile fabric of trust woven into every evening walk home. The Lamplighters' rounds take a harsher turn tonight. Clouds gather low over Paris, the wind sharpens, and you can smell rain hanging heavy in the air. He pulls his coat tighter, mutters under his breath, and keeps his pole at the ready. The work is never smooth. Storms, strikes, and shortages always find a way to test his rhythm. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Paris's gas lighting was managed by private companies under contract, and throughout the 19th century, disputes between the city and the companies occasionally disrupted supplies. Gas shortages could leave whole quarters dimmer than usual. Add to that the unpredictability of weather, gales that snuffed flames, heavy rain that drowned burners, and lamplighters were often improvising rather than following their neat timetables. You watch him struggle with a lamp at the corner of Rue Saint-Honoré. A gust whistles through, and the flame he's just coaxed alive dies instantly, leaving him scowling. He lights it again, cups his hand as though that might shield the globe, and mutters, "Stay awake, you stubborn beast!" The flame flickers but holds, reflecting faintly on the wet cobbles. Now for the quirky tidbit. During particularly bad shortages, lamplighters were rumored to ration light, leaving some less fashionable alleys dark so they could keep the boulevards glowing. Residents complained bitterly, joking that Paris's official motto had become, "Light for the rich, shadows for the rest." One lamplighter, tired of the abuse, supposedly left a note pinned to a dark post. "Complain to the gas man, not to me." You chuckle, imagining the satisfaction of such quiet rebellion. Historians still argue whether these disruptions exposed the fragility of urban modernization or whether they showcased resilience. Did shortages prove that La Ville Lumière was more image than substance, or did the lamplighter's stubborn persistence keep the illusion alive? Watching your companion relight the same lamp for the third time, you wonder if the answer is simply that the city survived by sheer human stubbornness. The sensory details grow harsher here. The wind pushes at your chest, damp mist slicks your face, and the smell of wet gas mingles with coal smoke from chimneys. Lamps flare unevenly, halos dissolving into rain. The lamplighter's pole glistens with droplets, slippery in his grip, while his boots splash through puddles deep enough to soak wool socks. The hiss of rain against flame becomes a constant background note. And here's your gentle joke. Picture a lamplighter in the middle of a downpour, flame extinguished again, sighing so loudly that a passerby shouts, "Try a bigger match, monsieur!" The lamplighter shakes his drenched cap and mutters, "Try a smaller storm." Despite the chaos, he pushes on. He skips no lamps, retraces steps where necessary, and improvises with scraps of cloth to shield burners. Each success feels like a small victory, a stubborn defiance of wind and company disputes alike. By the time the storm slackens, the boulevard glows unevenly, patches of brilliance broken by darker gaps, but still, Paris has light. And as you slog behind him, coat heavy with rain, you realize that this peculiar routine is not only about timing but also about persistence, keeping fire alive against odds both natural and man-made. The storm clouds drift away, and with them the lamplighter's scowl softens. Tonight his route has a different flavor. Celebration. The streets hum with music, banners flutter from balconies, and vendors shout above the din. Paris is in festival mode, and the lamplighter's routine suddenly transforms from quiet maintenance into full-blown choreography. Here's your mainstream historical fact. During national fetes, royal anniversaries, or the great expositions universelles of the 19th century, Paris required extraordinary illumination. Gas companies installed additional burners, strung temporary lamps along avenues, and sometimes even fitted colored glass to create dazzling effects. Lamplighters worked double shifts, ensuring that the boulevards and exhibition halls glowed like enchanted landscapes. You follow him down the Champs-Élysées, where special rows of extra lamps have been mounted on temporary posts. Each one requires attention. He darts from lamp to lamp, flame flaring with a rhythmic urgency, as though he's conducting an orchestra of fire. Behind him, the avenue slowly becomes a river of light stretching toward the Arc de Triomphe, its stone facade glowing like pale gold in the distance. Now for the quirky tidbit. On some occasions, Lamplighters experimented with tinted flames by placing colored glass shades over the burners. Visitors marveled at blue or red glows, though the locals joked that it made the city look like it was permanently holding a masquerade. One prankster even spread a rumor that a green-lit lamp marked the spot of secret lovers' meetings, prompting confused couples to loiter under the wrong posts. You can almost hear the chuckles drifting down the boulevard. Historians still argue whether these spectacles were genuine public joys or mostly propaganda, designed to impress international guests. Were Parisians truly enthralled by the glow, or was the light just another mask over deeper social unrest? Some claim the brilliance symbolized progress, others dismiss it as glitter papering over cracks. You stand there, blinking at the kaleidoscope of color, and admit both may be true. The sensory experience is intoxicating. Fiddles and accordions spilling from cafes, chestnuts roasting in iron pans, perfume drifting from promenading couples. Above it all, lamps blaze in synchronized rows, their glass globes shining like a string of captured stars. You hear the delighted gasps of children, the approving murmurs of visiting dignitaries, and the contented sigh of a lamplighter who, for once, sees his work noticed. Here's your gentle joke. Imagine a lamplighter bragging to his family after one of these events. "Tonight I lit the whole world." His wife raises an eyebrow, pours him soup, and replies, "And yet you still forgot to light the kitchen lamp." By the time he reaches the Tuileries, the spectacle is complete. Gardens glow with arranged lamps outlining hedges, fountains shimmer with reflected light, and the crowd swirls as if walking through a dream. You realize the lamplighter has become not just a worker tonight but a stagehand to the city itself, pulling unseen levers to transform Paris into a theater of brilliance. As you sink into the rhythm of flame and festival, you can feel drowsiness tugging at you, the peculiar comfort of knowing that for this one night, darkness doesn't stand a chance. The festival glow fades into quieter nights again, but Paris never stops tinkering with its lamps. You notice the lamplighter fumbling with something more delicate now, not just flame and valve, but a fragile gauze-like sleeve inside the burner. His brow furrows as he works, careful not to snap it. You lean closer, curious, and realize you've stepped into the era of upgrades. Here's your mainstream historical fact. By the late 19th century, gas lamps in Paris began using incandescent mantles, fine mesh sleeves coated with rare earth elements that glowed brilliantly when heated by the flame. These mantles produced brighter, wider light than the old open jets, but they were notoriously fragile. A careless tap could shatter them into useless ash. Lamplighters had to adapt, learning new techniques, filing reports on broken mantles, and carrying spares in padded cases. You watch him balance the pole, twisting a tiny brass key to open the lamp. Inside, he swaps a delicate mantle, his gloved fingers moving with surgeon-like precision. One wrong move, and the gauze crumbles. He sighs with relief when the new mantle catches, bathing the corner in a cleaner glow. The old yellow pools are being replaced by this almost crystalline light, Paris sharpening its own reflection. Now for the quirky tidbit. Lamplighters often grumbled about paperwork more than mantles. With every upgrade came inspections, reports, and new bureaucratic forms. One journal notes a lamplighter muttering, "I light 200 lamps a night but fill out 400 forms." Some even joke that the true fuel of Parisian lamps wasn't gas but ink, burned in triplicate. You chuckle, picturing him stamping papers by candlelight after spending all evening tending flames. Historians still argue whether these technical improvements truly improved the lamplighter's craft, or made it more precarious. Did mantles elevate their status as skilled workers, or did they just pile on responsibility without raising pay? Some scholars call it progress, others exploitation. You watch him close the lamp carefully, face lit white, and sense both pride and fatigue. The sensory details of this new era feel sharper. The light itself is cooler, less buttery, more insistent. Shadows narrow, puddles gleam brighter, and facades lose their soft haze, etched instead with clarity. The lamplighter's satchel now rattles with fragile spares, glass chimneys wrapped in cloth, and forms folded neatly but begrudgingly. His boots scrape the pavement with the same rhythm as before, but now his job feels half mechanical, half clerical. And here's your gentle joke. Imagine a lamplighter knocking on his supervisor's door to complain. "Sir, I've lit every lamp on the route." The supervisor peers over his spectacles and says, "Excellent, now please light up these forms with your signature." The lamplighter groans louder than a gas main. Yet, as he strides away, the difference behind him is unmistakable. Streets once dappled with golden haze now glow with crisp brightness, as though Paris has polished its night into something modern. You realize you're not just watching one man's routine but a city evolving lamp by lamp, mantle by mantle. And though bureaucracy may weigh down his shoulders, the flame in his pulse still kindles Paris alive, one delicate gauze sleeve at a time. The lamplighter adjusts his satchel, heavier now with fragile mantles and a notebook of forms, when a new sight catches your eye at the far end of the boulevard. There, looming above the steady yellow glow of gas, is something jarringly bright, an arc lamp mounted high on a pole, spitting out white light so fierce it makes the gas lamps look like flickering candles. You squint, shielding your eyes, and realize Paris is experimenting with its next rival, electricity. Here's your mainstream historical fact. By the 1870s and 1880s, Paris began installing experimental electric arc lamps on major boulevards and public squares. These lamps, powered by generators, produced dazzlingly intense light, so bright that pedestrians nicknamed them sunlight machines. They promised efficiency and brilliance, and within decades, electricity would eclipse gas entirely. But in these early years, they were erratic, humming loudly, casting harsh shadows, and sometimes sputtering out without warning. You glance at the lamplighter beside you. His jaw tightens as he watches the blinding glow. For decades, his pole and flame defined the rhythm of the city. Now, a machine hums arrogantly above, threatening to erase the need for his nightly tourney. Still, he shrugs, mutters something under his breath, and continues lighting his row of softer, golden lamps. The routine persists, even as the future sneaks in like an uninvited guest. Here's the quirky tidbit. Early electric lamps were so noisy and bright that Parisians found them unsettling. Some swore they couldn't sleep if one shone near their window. Others joked that arc lamps were perfect interrogation tools for errant husbands sneaking home late. There's even a report of people gathering just to watch moths fry themselves in the relentless beams. You shake your head, half amused, half horrified at the spectacle. Historians still argue whether electricity's arrival was welcomed eagerly or resisted stubbornly. Was it hailed as progress by the public, or did Parisians cling to the softer romance of gaslight? Some sources celebrate the brilliance of the 1881 International Exposition of Electricity. Others describe pedestrians shielding their eyes and muttering that the city now looked like a factory floor. You stand at the intersection of both stories, watching gas and electric glow wrestle on the same street. The sensory contrast is sharp. The arc lamp buzzes like a giant insect, its bluish-white beam bleaching the pavement. Carriage wheels glint too brightly, faces look pale, and every shadow stretches like a blade. Just steps away, the gas lamps hum softly, their yellow glow warm and forgiving, cradling the cafes in gentle halos. You can almost feel the city deciding which mood it prefers, dazzling clarity or softened intimacy. Here's your gentle joke. Imagine a lamplighter shading his eyes, muttering, "If that's the future, I'll need sunglasses in the 19th century." A passing Parisian chuckles. "Don't worry, monsieur, at least you'll finally be able to see the forms you hate filling out." As the lamplighter trudges on, his flames still igniting lamps in defiance, you realize you're watching a slow passing of the torch. Literally. Tonight, the peculiar routines continue as they always have, pole raised, valve turned, flame sparked. But in the distance, humming brighter than day, electricity whispers that time is changing. And Paris, city of light, will always keep evolving, one lamp at a time. The hum of the electric lamp fades behind you, and the lamplighter slips into narrower streets again. His pace is steady, but you notice he grips the pole a little tighter, as if warding off not just shadows but the unease of change. Tonight, though, it's not progress he worries about, it's the hazards and little legends that follow his trade like moths to a flame. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Lamplighters often faced accidents on their nightly rounds. Slips on icy cobblestones, burns from careless sparks, singed uniforms from leaning too close to open jets. These risks were part of the job. Many carried scars on their hands, reminders of evenings when routine turned treacherous. You walk with him as he steadies a ladder against a tall lamp. His boots creak as he climbs, lantern flame in one hand, valve key in the other. The ladder wobbles, the flame flares, and for a moment you hold your breath. Then he steadies, lights the globe, and climbs back down, brushing ash from his sleeve with a practiced shrug. To him, danger is as common as rain. Here's the quirky tidbit. Lamplighters often carried small charms against mishaps. A coin in the boot, a ribbon tied around the wrist, even a scrap of prayer tucked inside the cap. One popular superstition said that if your first lamp of the night lit cleanly on the first strike, the rest of your round would go smoothly. If it sputtered, well, you braced yourself for trouble. You smile, imagining a weary lamplighter whispering to his pole as if it were a temperamental horse. Historians still argue whether lamplighters truly believed in these rituals or simply clung to them for comfort. Were the charms genuine faith, or just coping mechanisms against monotony and risk? Some accounts portray deeply superstitious men. Others suggest they joked about their talismans but never forgot to carry them anyway. You can feel the debate flicker like the lamps themselves, half practical, half mystical. The sensory world tonight is darker, moodier. The air smells faintly of singed cloth, a reminder of too close encounters with flame. The cobblestones glisten with puddles that threaten to send boots sliding. Above, lamps hiss and sputter, some catching quickly, others sulking before they flare. Each spark is a little gamble, each glow a minor miracle. And here's your gentle joke. Imagine a lamplighter telling his apprentice, "Always carry bread in your pocket." The boy asks, "For hunger?" The lamplighter smirks, "No, for putting out your trousers when they catch fire." As the night deepens, the lamplighter pauses for a moment at a crossroads. He touches the coin in his pocket, straightens his cap, and continues with renewed rhythm. Whatever the truth of superstition, the rituals keep him steady, a man threading his way between practicality and myth. You follow, comforted by the strange idea that even in the most methodical routines, a little mystery and magic still cling like shadows to the light. The lamplighter's rounds have grown long. His boots are frayed, his shoulders ache, and yet there's something in the way he carries himself that feels more than routine. You notice the quiet pride stitched into the blue wool of his uniform, even as threads loosen and brass buttons dull. Tonight, your attention drifts toward the life behind the work, the wages, the camaraderie, the small rebellions tucked between flames. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Lamplighters in Paris were municipal employees, paid modest but steady wages. They earned enough to survive but rarely to prosper, and their positions often passed from father to son, creating small dynasties of light tenders. Some organized into associations, later into unions, petitioning for fair pay and shorter hours as the demands of mantles, paperwork, and new technologies piled on. You listen as he chats briefly with another lamplighter at a crossroads. They compare routes, grumble about broken mantles, and share news of a supervisor's inspection. The exchange is quick but warm, like two soldiers nodding in mutual respect. For men whose work often passed unnoticed, this brotherhood became a quiet anchor. Here's the quirky tidbit. Residents sometimes tipped lamplighters in coins, food, or even theater tickets. One journal tells of a lamplighter who boasted of attending every new operetta because grateful cafe owners slipped him passes. Imagine him, smelling faintly of soot, taking a front row seat among Paris's fashionable elite. The contrast alone makes you chuckle. Historians still argue whether lamplighters viewed their job as a mark of civic honor or simply endured it for the paycheck. Some memoirs describe the uniform as a badge of dignity, the wearers proud to serve the city. Others frame the work as drudgery, long walks in rain and fog, pay that never quite matched the effort. You watch the man beside you, shoulders straight despite exhaustion, and suspect the truth lies somewhere in between. The sensory details of this life are telling. The scrape of a coin pressed discreetly into his hand, the laughter of colleagues when one trips over his own ladder, the faint pride in polishing brass buttons before setting out at dusk. You feel the rhythm of camaraderie in their footsteps, the unspoken bond of men who light a city together, lamp by lamp. And here's your gentle joke. Picture a lamplighter returning home after a double shift. His wife asks, "How was your day?" He sighs, "Bright." She rolls her eyes and tells him to wash before supper. As the night edges closer to dawn, you sense the balance of frustration and fulfillment in his routine. The wages may be low, the hours long, the future uncertain, but the pride of leaving a glowing street behind, of knowing the city rests in part on his footsteps, remains undeniable. You walk with him, listening to his boots echo in the still streets, and realize his peculiar routine is also a quiet declaration that dignity can be found even in the humblest glow. The night has stretched long, and now the horizon softens into pale blue. Birds stir in the branches, shopkeepers unlatch shutters, and the city begins to yawn itself awake. For the lamplighter, however, dawn doesn't mean rest just yet. His tourney isn't complete until every lamp that burned through the night is gently put to sleep. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Lamplighters in Paris were responsible not only for igniting flames at dusk but also for extinguishing them at daybreak. Each morning, they retraced their steps, turning valves and checking for leaks, ensuring the city transitioned seamlessly back to daylight. The same men who summoned the night now dismissed it, keeping the city's rhythm intact. You follow as he approaches the first lamp of the morning. With a practiced twist of his key, the flame dwindles, sighs, and vanishes. The lamp's glass globe fogs for a moment, then clears, revealing nothing but daylight. He adjusts his cap, shoulders his pole, and moves on. One by one, the lamps fade, their brief stardom finished until dusk returns. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some Parisians joke that lamplighters were the only workers paid to turn off the sun. Others claim the extinguishing rounds felt like a funeral procession for the night, each hiss of flame a tiny burial. One wag even insisted he heard a lamplighter whisper, "Sleep well, my little star," before snuffing each lamp. You chuckle softly, imagining the tender absurdity. Historians still argue whether this final duty was symbolic, a way of reminding Parisians that light was a civic gift, not a natural guarantee, or simply routine maintenance. Was the extinguishing ceremony a gesture of order, or just housekeeping? Watching him methodically dim the last stretch of boulevard, you sense a bit of both. The sensory details are gentle now. The hiss of gas fading, the faint metallic click of valves, the smell of dew washing away the night's smoke. Dawn light warms the cobblestones, turning puddles gold. The lamplighter's boots sound slower, heavier, but there's a calmness in the rhythm, as though even his fatigue has softened. Here's your gentle joke. Imagine him finishing the final lamp, stretching his back, and declaring, "Well, Paris, you can take it from here." A milkman passing with clinking bottles snorts, "Don't worry, monsieur, the sun's punctual enough." As he tucks away his tools, you realize you've walked with him not just through a night but through an entire era. For centuries, his peculiar routines shaped how Paris lived, celebrated, and even dreamed. And though electricity will soon claim the lamps, the memory of his footsteps, his flame-tipped pole, and his quiet guardianship will linger, woven into the city's very glow. The night is finished, and so is the long journey of your lamplighter. You picture him walking slowly home through quiet streets, the pole tucked under his arm, the last flames behind him fading into nothing. Around him, Paris exhales into morning, shutters swing open, loaves of bread emerge warm from bakery ovens, and the city resumes its ordinary rhythm, no longer needing his fire. You take one last look at the lamps above, their glass globes catching the dawn light without a flame inside. They seem content, resting, waiting for evening when they'll glow again. There's a hush in this moment, a reminder that even routines that feel endless always come gently to a pause. Let your shoulders relax, let your breath slow. Imagine yourself drifting along those quiet cobblestones, the air cool but soft, the last smell of smoke dissolving into fresh morning air. The lamplighter's footsteps grow fainter, and with them, the chatter of the city fades. All that remains is the steady rhythm of your own breath, like the calm extinguishing of lamps one by one. The debates, the storms, the gossip, even the experiments with blinding arc lights, they all fade now, softened by time. What endures is the feeling of steady care, of one person walking the streets to ensure the city slept safely in light. That care is still here, wrapping gently around you as you settle deeper into rest. So close your eyes. Let the glow dim. Let the night fold into silence. You are safe, you are carried, and you are already drifting,